The silver goblet struck the stone floor, spun once beneath the royal table and rolled to a stop against Elara Voss's shoe. No one moved to retrieve it. The feast had gone silent. Hundreds of candle flames trembled beneath the vaulted ceiling of Blackthorn Keep, throwing gold across armor, black velvet, wolf-crested banners, and the rigid faces of alphas who had spent their lives being obeyed. Elara stood below the raised royal dais in a plain gray healer's dress, one hand curled around the old silver ring on her finger. She could feel every stare in the hall: curiosity, disgust, satisfaction, the animal awareness of wolves who had just scented weakness. Across from her, Lady Seraphine Vale remained composed. The Dowager Luna did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her words carried cleanly through the hall. Perhaps the daughter of a thief should not be trusted with the lives of wolves. A stir passed through the tables. Someone near the eastern column gave a quiet laugh and swallowed it. Elara kept her chin level. Her father had been dead for 6 years. 6 years. And still his name could be dragged into a room before hers and used like a blade. Seraphine turned toward the royal dais. Surely your majesty agrees that trust must be earned before it is granted. At the center of the dais sat Alpha King Kael Draven. Until that moment, he had not spoken. He rose. The change in the room was immediate. Something older than ceremony moved through the gathered wolves. Kael's dominance pressed outward in a silent wave. Lesser-ranked wolves dropped their eyes before they seemed to realize they were doing it. Conversations that had already died somehow became quieter. Elara's wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. Kael descended the dais one step at a time. He was tall, broad-shouldered in black formal wool, the silver scar at his temple catching the candlelight. His expression revealed nothing: no outrage, no amusement, no sympathy. That frightened her more than anger would have. He stopped in front of her. Elara forced herself not to step back. "Did you steal anything?" he asked. His voice was low, but the entire hall heard it. "No, your majesty." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Look at me when you say it." Heat climbed the back of her neck. Every lesson she had learned since her father's disgrace told her to lower her gaze, answer softly, disappear before someone decided she was insolent. Instead, Elara looked directly into the Alpha King's silver-gray eyes. "No, your majesty." For one suspended second, neither moved. Then Kael turned. He faced the hall, the High Luna Council, the visiting alphas, the nobles, and Lady Seraphine Vale. "Elara Voss stands under my shield." The words landed harder than a shouted command. Royal Beta Rowan, standing behind the throne, went still. An elderly alpha at the council table lifted his head sharply. Elara heard someone inhale. She did not understand why. Kael either failed to notice the reaction or did not care. He pointed toward the crescent-shaped alpha's circle around the throne, reserved for those closest to royal authority. "Bring her a chair." A servant froze. Kael looked at him. The young wolf moved at once. Lady Myrelle Vale sat to the king's right, pale in moon-blue silk. The nearest space within the circle was beside her. The servant hesitated, then began shifting Myrelle's chair outward to make room. A flush rose across Myrelle's face. Elara's stomach tightened. Whatever Kael intended, every wolf in Blackthorn was watching him place a disgraced healer beside the seat of royal power. Elara looked towards Seraphine, expecting fury. Instead, the Dowager Luna smiled. Not broadly, not triumphantly, just enough for Elara to see it. And for the first time that night, fear cut colder than humiliation. 3 hours earlier, Elara Voss had been trying hard not to be noticed. 3 hours earlier, the royal infirmary smelled of boiled linen, crushed herbs, and wet fur. Elara Voss stood over a beta guard who had been sweating through two blankets for nearly an hour. Terran Holt had returned from the Northern Patrol with a shallow cut across his ribs, a fever, and a pulse that kept slipping strangely beneath her fingers. Wound infection, Senior Healer Marrow said. Clean it again and increase the willow bark. Elara did not move. The wound was red, but not badly swollen. More important, it was not knitting. A healthy wolf should already have been healing. Terran's pupils were pinpricks despite the dim room, and beneath the smell of fever, she caught something bitter and metallic on his skin. She lifted his hand. His nail beds had turned faintly gray. Where were you cut? Elara asked. East Ridge, Terran rasped. By what? Thorn fence. There was a broken trap under it. Elara examined the wound again. Along one edge, almost hidden beneath dried blood, was a green-black stain. Not infection, she said. Wolfsbane contamination. Marrow frowned. There is no wolfsbane on Crown Patrol routes. There is on illegal hunting traps. You are guessing. Elara crossed to the medicine cabinet. Then stop me if his pulse improves. She measured charcoal tincture, moonroot, and a neutralizing extract into a cup. If you are wrong, Marrow began, he loses another hour while we treat the wrong thing. That silenced him. Elara helped Terran drink. 10 minutes later, his pulse steadied. 20 minutes later, the trembling in his hands eased. By the time Royal Beta Rowan entered, Terran's fever had begun to drop. Marrow stepped forward. We caught the contamination early, my lord. He should recover fully. Elara washed the black residue from her fingers. Rowan glanced toward the cot. The king wants Holt debriefed before evening council. Tomorrow, Marrow said. The Northern Patrol found rogue sign near Crown Land. And he is still my patient. Rowan was Royal Beta, second only to Kael in the military hierarchy. Marrow did not lower his gaze. Inside this ward, even an alpha waits for medical clearance. Rowan stared at him, then gave one curt nod. Tomorrow. After he left, an apprentice named Lysa looked at Elara. Doesn't it bother you? What? Marrow taking credit. Across the room, the senior healer was already explaining his antidote adjustment to Rowan's aid. Elara picked up Terran's chart. Being right keeps patients alive, she said. Being noticed doesn't. By late afternoon, Terran was sleeping naturally when the infirmary doors opened again. The royal physician entered with 2 guards. Which of you treated Holt? Marrow straightened. The physician looked past him. The antidote. Who chose it? Marrow cleared his throat. Miss Voss identified the toxin. The physician's eyes settled on her. Good. You're coming upstairs. Elara stopped writing. Why? Alpha Corvin of Redwater has a documented sensitivity to botanical preservatives. The ceremonial moon wine tonight contains one his physician cannot identify. Elara frowned. Then why serve it? Because Corvin considers refusing the first cup an insult, and apparently etiquette matters more to him than breathing. I'm not court staff. Tonight you are medical staff. Stand at the rear of the royal hall. If he reacts, I want someone there who recognizes toxins quickly. Elara looked down at her gray healer's dress. That is what I'm wearing? The physician glanced at it. Unless you can cure a closed airway in silk. An hour later, Elara stood beneath the carved wolves of the royal hall, wishing she were back beside Terran's cot. The room glittered with rank. Great pack alphas wore ceremonial black and silver. Luna sat beneath banners stitched with old bloodlines. At the center, Kael Draven occupied the raised dais like a man tolerating a ritual he had not invented. Elara stayed near the western wall. Invisible was safe. She had survived 6 years by making herself useful, quiet, and forgettable. It worked until Alpha Corvin took his first ceremonial sip. Elara saw the flush climb his throat before anyone else did. By the time he coughed, she was moving. She checked his airway, smelled bitter almond beneath the spice, and ordered the cup removed. The rash behind his ears confirmed it. A preservative in the wine was interacting with one of his medicines. No poison, no attack, just a dangerous combination. When she finished explaining, she realized Kael was watching her. What would have happened if he finished it? He asked. His airway would have closed before dessert, Your Majesty. And you knew from the smell? From the smell, his medication, and the rash behind his ears. Kael gave one small nod. Nothing more. But across the hall, Lady Seraphine Vale had seen the exchange. Later, as Elara returned to the wall, Seraphine caught a servant by the wrist. What is the healer's name? Elara Voss, my lady. Seraphine went still. Voss? Yes, my lady. Her eyes moved from Elara to Kael. Elias Voss's daughter? The servant swallowed. Yes. Seraphine released him. Then keep her in the hall. The royal feast resumed as though nothing had happened to Alpha Corvin. That, Elara discovered, was how powerful people survived embarrassment. A man could nearly stop breathing in front of 200 witnesses, recover because a healer recognized the cause, and within minutes the musicians would begin again, while servants replaced the offending wine. Elara returned to the western wall. Lady Seraphine Vale had other plans. Miss Voss. The name traveled farther than it should have. Elara turned. Seraphine sat 3 places below the royal dais in dark silver silk, one hand resting beside an untouched goblet. Lady Morelle Vale sat near Kael, composed but visibly uncomfortable after the disruption with Corvin. Yes, my lady? Come closer. I dislike speaking across a room. Every instinct Elara possessed told her not to move. Refusing the first voice of the High Luna Council before half the kingdom, however, would create exactly the attention she had spent years avoiding. She approached. Seraphine studied her face. Your father was educated, was he not? Yes. In the old medical languages? Among other things. And he taught you? He taught me to read. Seraphine smiled. How fortunate. A servant placed a narrow, leather-bound volume near Seraphine's plate. Elara recognized the angular old lichen script stamped across the cover. I was discussing this passage with Lord Hadron, Seraphine said. An early plague text. Fascinating how primitive healers confused obedience with health. She opened to a marked page. Here, the wounded wolf survives by submitting to the stronger will. Rather appropriate, don't you think? A few guests smiled. Elara looked at the line. Seraphine had translated it incorrectly. Deliberately. Elara lowered her eyes. If you say so, my lady. Do you disagree? I was not invited here as a scholar. No. You were invited to keep Alpha Corvin from dying over his wine. Seraphine's smile sharpened. But surely Elias Voss's daughter can manage one sentence. The room began turning toward them. Then Kael spoke from the dais. What does it actually say? Elara looked at him. There was no command in his voice, no pressure pushing against her wolf, only a question. Seraphine's fingers stilled on the page. Elara answered. The wounded wolf survives when the stronger will restrains itself. Silence spread nearest the royal table. Lord Hadron leaned forward. He was old enough that his white hair reached his collar. May I? Seraphine passed him the book. He read the line twice. The healer is correct. A soft murmur moved through the hall. Seraphine did not flush. That made her more dangerous. How interesting, she said. Your father taught you well. Elara knew then that the mistake had never been the point. Seraphine closed the book. Elias Voss was considered brilliant once, was he not? Elara's stomach tightened. Seraphine continued in the same conversational tone. Royal relief accounts, plague distribution, supply ledgers. He had access to all of it. End quote. My father was a healer. and an administrator. He was cleared to handle medical allocations. Until the allocations disappeared. Elara's fingers closed around the silver ring she wore. Across the tables, heads turned fully now. Seraphine tilted her head. How much was it? Enough medicine for 3 northern infirmaries? My lady, wolves died waiting for shipments that never arrived. The words struck harder than any insult about poverty. Elara had heard every version of the accusation. She had watched landlords refuse them rooms after recognizing the name Voss. She had watched former friends cross streets to avoid her father. She had watched him insist the accounts were wrong until fever took him before he could prove it. My father did not steal medicine. Seraphine's brows rose. Then where did it go? I don't know. Exactly. Elara hated herself for giving Seraphine what she wanted. The Dowager Luna leaned back. Knowledge is useful, Miss Voss. Character is more so. A clever wolf without integrity simply becomes harder to catch. Morel shifted beside the king. Aunt, she said quietly. Seraphine ignored her. Tell me, Miss Voss, does corruption pass through blood? Something in Elara went still. She could defend herself. She could accuse Seraphine of cruelty. She could say what she had wanted to say for 6 years. And by morning, every great pack could decide the disgraced Voss girl was unstable, insolent, and unfit to touch a patient. Her survival had always depended on knowing when silence cost less than pride. She said nothing. That silence was what Seraphine wanted. The next minute came apart in fragments Elara would remember long afterward. Her fingers knocking the silver goblet from the table, metal ringing against stone. Seraphine turning toward the throne and questioning whether the daughter of a thief should be trusted with wolves' lives. Then Kael rose. By the time Elara fully understood what was happening, she had looked the Alpha King in the eyes and denied stealing anything. And Kael Draven had answered with a declaration that changed the room. Elara Voss stands under my shield. Now a chair scraped across the dais. Royal Beta Rowan watched without expression, but 2 council elders exchanged a glance Elara could not read. A servant shifted Lady Morel farther outward, creating space within the Alpha's circle. Elara climbed the steps with every eye following her. Kael indicated the new seat. Sit. She did. Her knees felt less reliable than she wanted anyone to know. Morel glanced at her, humiliation coloring her cheeks, but there was more unease than hatred in her expression. Kael turned toward Elara as though the hall were not watching. Corvin's reaction, he said. Could it happen again? The professional question steadied her. If his medication remains unchanged, yes. What do you need? A complete list of what he takes and access to the moonwine ingredients. You'll have both. No mockery, no condescension, he asked. She answered. For several minutes, the king treated her not as Elias Voss's disgraced daughter but as the healer who had kept an alpha breathing. Below them, Seraphine watched in silence. Then she leaned toward an elderly council alpha beside her. You heard him? The elder's face remained grave. Every wolf in the hall did. Seraphine lifted her goblet. Good. Morning came gray over Blackthorn. Elara crossed the infirmary courtyard before sunrise, still wearing her boots from the feast. She had slept badly and dreamed of silver goblets rolling forever across stone. The ward doors were closed. That was wrong. The royal infirmary never closed. A young guard stood outside, with his hands behind his back. When Elara reached for the latch, he stepped sideways. Miss Voss. She stopped. Move. His discomfort sharpened. I can't. I work here. Not this morning. Behind him stood Royal Beta Rowan and a woman in dark blue tribunal robes. The woman held a sealed document. Elara looked at Rowan. What happened? The tribunal officer answered. Elara Voss, by authority of the Pack Medical Tribunal, Your clinical privileges are suspended pending review of royal partiality. Elara took the notice. Halfway down the page, she found the clause. Her eyes closed for 1 second. Of course, under my shield. Kael had not merely defended her. He had declared her a crown-protected retainer before the assembled Pax. A healer under direct royal protection could no longer be treated as neutral. You knew? Rowan asked quietly. I knew the law existed. Did you know he was going to say it? Elara folded the notice once. No. The infirmary door opened behind the guard. Lysa appeared inside, saw Elara, and froze. Elara? The guard blocked the doorway before she could step out. Humiliation climbed Elara's throat. Yesterday she had been trusted to stop an alpha from suffocating. This morning she was not permitted to cross the threshold. Heavy footsteps sounded across the courtyard. Kael. He wore no ceremonial coat now, only black trousers, boots, and a dark shirt beneath an open military jacket. His expression told Elara he had already heard. Open the door, he said. The guard went pale. The tribunal officer did not move. Your Majesty, she said, this ward is under medical tribunal authority until the review concludes. Kael's gaze turned toward her. I said open it. No. Rowan's shoulders tightened. Kael stepped closer. You are refusing a direct order from your Alpha King? In this matter, yes. For a moment his alpha pressure rose, the force that made wolves lower their heads before thought could interfere. Then he stopped it. The officer remained standing. If you compel reinstatement, she said, the tribunal can determine Miss Voss's license compromised by crown coercion. The suspension could become permanent. Kael went still. Elara watched the realization reach him. Not anger. Calculation first. Then guilt. He looked at the notice in her hand. Leave us, he said. The officer inclined her head and walked inside. Rowan hesitated, then followed. Elara turned away. Wait. She faced him. I did not know she would file before morning. Elara laughed once, without humor. That is supposed to help? No. You knew the shield had consequences. Yes. And you used it anyway. His jaw shifted. Seraphine was tearing apart your father's name in front of the entire hall. So you decided for me. I was ending her attack. You ended her sentence. Elara held up the suspension notice. You did not stop to ask what your answer would cost me. I was protecting you. The words came too quickly. Elara stared at him. There it was. The certainty. The same certainty that had filled the hall when he stood, spoke, and expected the world to rearrange itself because he had chosen the shape it should take. You protected me like territory. Kael's face changed. Elara stepped closer, lowering her voice because she refused to make this another spectacle. I am not territory. He said nothing. Wind carried rain and pine across the courtyard. Elara looked back at the infirmary. What happens now? The tribunal reviews the conflict. How long? Days. Possibly weeks. And until then, I cannot treat patients. No. The word seemed to cost him. Elara folded the notice again and slid it into her pocket. Then I have no reason to be here. She started toward the servants' wing. Elara. She stopped. I cannot undo what I did last night, Kael said. Not without making this worse. At least you understand that much. I do. She turned. There was no command in his expression now. Only restraint. I may have another position for you. I am a healer. You are also fluent in Old Lycan, trained in medical records, and apparently incapable of ignoring a broken system. Despite herself, Elara almost smiled. Almost. Kael continued. The Royal Healing Archive has not had a competent cataloger in years. Clinical suspension does not bar scholarly work. Is this pity? No. Guilt? A pause. Partly. She appreciated the answer more than she wanted to. That is not enough. I know. He reached inside his coat and held out a folded document. Elara did not take it immediately. What is it? A contract. Temporary until you decide whether you want the work. She unfolded the first page. Royal Healing Archive. Restricted Historical Collection. Her eyes slowed. Kael watched her read. There are neglected medical ledgers in that collection that have not been properly reviewed in decades, he said. Relief accounts, plague records, council allocations. Elara looked up. Kael's voice lowered. If you still want the truth about your father, there may be records inside that no one has opened in 20 years. Elara did not sign the contract in the courtyard. She carried it back to the narrow room assigned to infirmary staff, closed the door, and read every line twice. By noon, she had covered the margins with objections. When she entered the Royal Healing Archive, Kael was waiting beside a long oak table with Royal Beta Rowan and a woman Elara recognized only by the ring of brass keys at her waist. Mara Fenwick, the woman said, assistant keeper of records. Elara nodded. The archive occupied the oldest western wing of Blackthorn. Shelves climbed 2 stories toward a vaulted ceiling darkened by age. Bundled plague reports leaned beside leather ledgers. Rolled treatment maps crowded pigeonholes. The air smelled of dust, vellum, cedar resin, and old ink. For the first time since the tribunal notice, Elara forgot to be angry. Somewhere in these shelves were decades of decisions no living witness could soften, deny, or conveniently forget. Kael noticed the contract in her hand. You read it. I corrected it. Rowan looked away quickly, hiding amusement. Kael held out his hand. Show me. Elara placed the pages before him. The salary is lower than the last male cataloger received. He had university credentials. He lasted 11 days. Mara coughed into her fist. Elara continued. If I produce a translation or research paper, my name remains attached to it. My personal scholarly notes remain mine. Official archival findings stay in the archive record. If I am dismissed, it requires written cause and formal review. Kael read the markings without interruption. And this? He tapped one paragraph. Preservation rights. If I am expected to work with fragile medical records, I need authority to create working transcriptions and certified facsimiles. Otherwise, every scholar who studies a brittle volume damages the original again. Can those copies leave the archive? Only when procedure allows it. Originals do not. Mara nodded. Standard for trained archival staff. Elara looked at Kael. Then put it in writing. He took Rowan's pen. No argument, no wounded pride. He amended the salary, added the attribution clause, and initialed the preservation provision. He also accepted her condition that no official research finding could be removed from the archive record without a written notation identifying who ordered it. When he finished, he turned the contract toward her. You negotiate like an alpha. No, Elara said. I negotiate like a woman who has already lost one profession. Something in his expression tightened. Fair. She signed. The next 3 hours were less dramatic and considerably dustier. Mara showed her what remained of the catalog system. Each volume carried an accession number matched to an old register. Preservation copies required the number, date, page range, copyist's signature, a witness signature, and the archive's embossed seal. Never certify your own copy alone, Mara said. She pushed a damaged fever journal toward Elara. Practice. Elara transcribed 2 pages, marking an unreadable phrase rather than guessing it. At the bottom, she signed her name. Mara pointed. You forgot the witness line. Elara slid the page back. Mara countersigned, pressed the brass archive seal into the paper, then entered the copy in a separate register. That copy can now be used for research without anyone pretending it is the original, Mara said. Before Elara could ask another question, the archive door opened. A slender man in a dark green council coat entered carrying a leather folio. He was perhaps 40, neat enough to look untouched by Blackthorn's dust. Mara, Secretary Vey. He bowed to Elara. Dorian Vey, Senior Records Secretary to the High Luna Council. His tone was courteous and professional. Mara accepted the folio and checked the forms inside. Annual relief audit? As thrilling as ever. She collected 3 certified facsimiles from a locked cabinet and compared each accession number against his request. Dorian signed the receiving line. Mara tore a narrow counterfoil from the form and placed it in her register before handing him the copies. Elara watched. Council can request archive material? Inspection copies, Mara said. Never restricted originals without separate authority. Dorian lifted the bundle slightly. Council takes the copy. Your archive keeps the counterfoil. Everyone remains suspicious of everyone, and civilization survives another year. For the first time that day, Elara smiled. Dorian gave a polite nod and left. Late afternoon light had turned the high windows gray when Kael returned. He stopped at the edge of Elara's work table rather than walking behind her shoulder. May I? She realized he was asking permission to look at the catalog pages. It should not have mattered. It did. Elara moved the stack toward him. You have 4 competing numbering systems, she said. 2 appear to have been invented by men who hated future generations. Kael studied the page. Can you fix it? Yes. How long? If no one interrupts me with royal disasters, several months. One corner of his mouth moved. I will schedule my disasters elsewhere. He left her to work. Elara spent another hour comparing shelf marks against the oldest accession register. Most entries were mundane. Fever accounts, battlefield amputations, midwife reports, silver exposure cases. Then her finger stopped. Winter Relief Ledger, Volume 7. Restricted Historical Collection. She read the line beneath it twice. Referenced Administrator, Elara Voss. The Winter Relief Ledger was not where Elara expected it to be. Mara led her past the main shelves, through an iron gate, and into a narrow room where the air was colder and smelled strongly of cedar resin. Restricted medical volumes stood behind wire-fronted cabinets, each marked with an accession number. Nothing leaves this room without being logged, Mara said. Elara opened the oldest accession register on a slanted desk. Winter Relief Ledger, Volume 7. She read the entry carefully before Mara unlocked the cabinet. Bound in dark calfskin. Lower right corner damaged by water. 23 quires. 184 leaves, remnant of a black wax relief seal on the rear board. Mara placed the volume on a padded cradle. Elara checked each detail. The water stain climbed exactly where the register said it should. The old wax had cracked almost in half, but the wolf head impression was still visible. She counted the quires twice. It matches, she said. Good. Write that before you start reading. Elara recorded the condition, accession number, date, and both their names. Only then did she open the ledger. The first pages were dull enough to calm her. Winter fever tonics, dried moonroot, silver burn salves, shipments sent north during a season of heavy snow. Columns of batch numbers ran beside pack names and treatment estimates. Then she saw her father's handwriting. Not his signature. His handwriting. A narrow note ran along one margin in the firm, slightly right-leaning script she had watched move across household bills when she was a child. Batch discrepancy. Verify allocation before reconciliation. Elara stopped breathing for a moment. Mara noticed. You know the hand? Yes. She touched nothing but the edge of the page. My father's. The ink had faded near the water-damaged corner. One word in the next line was partly destroyed, leaving only the beginning and final letters. Elara prepared the preservation transcription. She copied exactly what remained, then inserted the archive's double crescent mark where the missing letters could not be read. Relief, aloe, cation. Mara looked over her shoulder. Don't reconstruct it. I'm not. Good. Elara finished the page range, signed the facsimile, and passed it across the table. Mara countersigned, embossed the archive seal, and entered the copy into the register. For the next 2 days, Elara worked through Volume 7 page by page. The pattern was difficult to see because the ledger had never been designed as a story. It was accounting, batch codes, dates, quantities, signatures, corrections. But Elara began building a separate index of every discrepancy carrying her father's notation. She marked none of them as theft. She marked them only as questions. That distinction mattered to her. She had spent 6 years wanting Elias innocent. Wanting was not proof. She almost forgot the infirmary. Almost. The tribunal suspension still sat folded inside the drawer of her desk. Each morning she saw it before reaching for her pen. Kael came to the archive after midnight. On the second evening, Elara heard his uneven step before she saw him. He entered without guards, carrying a stack of war reports beneath one arm. Halfway to the table, his right leg caught. Only slightly, but Elara noticed the way his hand closed around the chair back until the spasm passed. You're hurt. I've been hurt for 8 years. That was not an answer. It was the one I intended to give. He sat. Elara returned to her ledger. Several minutes passed. Kael finally said, You're not going to ask? If you wanted me to know, you would tell me. Silence. When she glanced up, he was looking at her differently. What? Nothing. That is rarely true. A faint smile touched his mouth. Old cavalry injury. Bad break. My wolf healed enough to keep the leg, not enough to make shifting pleasant. Elara resisted the instinct to move closer and examine it. How often? Does it hurt? Yes. Every day. He said it as though discussing weather. Elara nodded once and went back to work. Kael watched her. No advice? You didn't ask for treatment. That earned a quiet laugh. For the first time, the silence between them did not feel defensive. It felt shared. The following afternoon, Dorian Vey returned. He carried a formal request stamped with the seal of the Office of the First Voice. Mara read it. Historical Relief Audit. Dorian spread his hands. The council has discovered history again. Mara checked the accession number. Elara looked up. Volume 7? The inspection copy only, Mara said. The original remained on its cradle. Mara prepared Elara's certified facsimile, attached the required cover sheet, and made Dorian sign the receiving line. Elara watched the name appear beneath the council seal. Dorian Vey. Dorian glanced once at the thick copy. You cataloged this? Elara nodded. Clean work. There was nothing unusual in his tone. He tucked the facsimile beneath his arm as if it were one more bureaucratic burden. Mara tore off the counterfoil and filed it. Routine. Legal. Forgettable. Elara returned to the original ledger. She spent the rest of the day tracing missing shipments against plague treatment indexes from the same winter. Most discrepancies led nowhere. Records were incomplete, handwriting inconsistent, pack borders changed over time. Near dusk, one batch number caught her attention. Nu Dartuzonyede. Volume 7 marked it as unreceived. Elara pulled the Northern Treatment Index. Nothing. She checked the common infirmary rolls. Nothing. Then, almost as an afterthought, she opened a private treatment register from Vale territory. Her fingers stopped halfway down the page. No dar tuzon yedi. Same winter. Same quantity. Destination. Vale Pack Private Infirmary. Elara stared at the line until the letters blurred. The medicine had never vanished. She whispered into the empty archive. It wasn't missing. The number NR 417 kept Elara awake. By dawn, she had found four more. Each batch was listed in the winter relief ledger as missing, delayed, or unreceived. Each appeared weeks later in treatment records belonging to private Vale facilities. Not one had reached the common infirmaries they were meant to supply. Elara laid the records across the long archive table in chronological order. Mara arrived carrying tea, took one look at the spread of documents, and set the tray down untouched. What did you find? Not theft, diversion. Elara pointed to the shipment codes. My father marked discrepancies before the financial reconciliation. These batches were recorded as losses later, but they were treated as delivered inside Vale territory. Mara leaned closer. That proves the medicine moved. Not who ordered it. Elara refused to make the mistake everyone else had made with Elias, choosing a conclusion first and forcing the records to serve it. They searched the relief collection until midday. Behind a bundle of plague correspondence, Elara found a thin file bearing the seal of the old royal secretariat. Inside was a report in her father's hand. Formal variants report Northern Winter Relief. Her pulse jumped. Elias had listed the same shipment codes Elara had found. He identified Vale private storehouses and requested an immediate inquiry into unauthorized diversion. At the bottom was a faded stamp. Received Royal Secretariat. Elara read it twice. He reported it. Mara said nothing. They pulled the Secretariat register next. 3 days after Elias's report, a War Cabinet minute recorded a discussion of Northern supply failures. Elara's eyes caught on one line. His Majesty reviewed Healer Voss's allegations regarding Vale relief diversions. The room seemed to narrow. Kael's father had known. The third document was worse. An emergency alliance continuance order carried the former Alpha King's seal and signature. Vale troop levies were to remain uninterrupted. Formal investigation into the relief accounts was deferred until the Northern campaign concluded. A secretary had added a margin note. Inquiry postponed by Crown directive until conclusion of campaign. Elara found the final entry in a later credential register. Elias Voss, medical authority revoked. The investigation had never resumed. She was still staring at the page when Kael entered. He saw her face, then the documents. What happened? Elara pushed the cabinet minute toward him. Read. He did. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Then he read the continuance order. My father signed this. Yes. He knew there were allegations. He reviewed them. Kael looked at the variance report. He delayed the inquiry for troops. And while he delayed it, House Vale accused my father. Kael lowered himself into the nearest chair. For once, he did not look like the Alpha King. He looked like a son discovering that one of the foundations beneath him had rotted long before he learned to stand. We seal everything, he said. Alara's head lifted. Not bury it. I didn't say bury. His voice was rough, but controlled. If these records become evidence, no one touches them without witnesses. Mara summoned the keeper of royal records and a clerk from the Pack Medical Tribunal. The procedure took an hour. Page counts were recorded. Bindings, accession numbers, stains, seals, and existing damage were described line by line. The Winter Relief Ledger, Elias's variance report, the Cabinet Minute, and the continuance order were each entered into evidentiary custody. Elara watched two seals pressed across the evidence cases. One belonged to royal records. The other belonged to the tribunal. Kael stood across the table. He never touched either case. When the clerk carried them away, the archive felt strangely empty. Rain began after dark. Kael remained. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, he said, "My father taught me the crown survived because he never hesitated." Elara looked at him across the table. Perhaps sometimes he should have. His gaze met hers. Perhaps I should have. The words carried the weight of the feast between them. Elara folded her hands. You cannot change what he did. No. You cannot change what you did either. No. He did not defend himself. That mattered. Kael turned toward the high windows, rain streaking the black glass. I spent years learning to make decisions before fear could make them for me. On a battlefield, hesitation kills. People are not battlefields. A humorless breath left him. You keep proving that. He was silent again before saying, I don't know how to want someone without immediately thinking of every way I could lose them. Alara's heartbeat shifted. There it was, not a command, not a declaration before a hall full of wolves. Something far more dangerous because it belonged only to them. Then don't turn wanting me into guarding me, she said. Kael looked at her. Tell me what it should be. Trust. He came around the table slowly. Elara felt his wolf before he reached her, a low, instinctive awareness, answering something inside her own. The pull had been growing for weeks, enough to ignore until now. Kael stopped within reach. He did not touch her. May I kiss you? Elara could have stepped back. She did not. Yes. His hand rose to her cheek after she answered. The kiss was careful, almost restrained enough to hurt. Then Elara caught the front of his shirt, and the control between them loosened. His other hand settled at her waist, warm and steady, while her wolf pressed closer beneath her skin with a recognition she refused to mistake for permission. When they parted, their foreheads remained together. Kael's breathing was uneven. I don't want the bond to decide this for us. Neither do I. His thumb moved once along her cheek. Then I choose you. Elara closed her eyes. She was not ready to promise forever. But she was ready to stop pretending this was nothing. I'm still here. The next afternoon, Mara returned from the records desk, carrying a packet. Council finally returned the Volume 7 facsimile. Elara looked up. They kept that one longer than usual. Mara set it down beside the access register. A second form had been clipped beneath the return receipt. Elara glanced at it. Council request. Comparative Historical Review. Requested Officer, Dorian Vey. Material requested. Elara Voss handwriting exemplars. The warmth left Elara's hands. The attack happened before sunrise. Mara found the archive clerk at the bottom of the western stairwell, conscious but bleeding from a split scalp. His name was Thomas Reed, a quiet young wolf who handled night inventories and never touched restricted collections without written authorization. By the time Elara reached the corridor, Kael was already there. Thomas sat against the wall while a healer bound his head. One cabinet door in the restricted room stood open. Nothing obvious was missing, but several drawers had been searched. Kael looked at Elara once. Then he became the Alpha King. Seal the western wing. No one enters or leaves without Rowan's approval. Guards moved immediately. Elara stepped toward the open cabinet. Kael blocked her. Not you. She stared at him. What? You're done here until I know who came through that room. That is my archive. It is now a security scene. I can identify what was disturbed faster than any guard. No. The word was quiet. Absolute. Elara felt the warmth of the previous night vanish. Kael. His expression tightened at the use of his name, but he did not move aside. Someone attacked a clerk searching for records connected to your father. Until I know why, you do not enter this wing alone. You do not leave Blackthorn without an escort. She looked at the two guards already taking position behind him. You assigned them before speaking to me. Yes. Last night you asked me what I needed. Kael said nothing. I told you. Trust. Yes. His eyes darkened. Someone could have killed Tomas. And that makes my choices yours? It makes the danger real. The danger was real yesterday. I did not know someone was willing to spill blood for these records yesterday. Elara stepped closer. Then stand beside me. I cannot gamble with your life. Her anger went cold. It is not yours to gamble with. Something moved in his face. That is the part you still don't understand. Kael lowered his voice. I have buried enough people, and I am not one of your dead soldiers. No. Then stop treating me like the next body you have to prevent. He flinched as if she had struck him. Elara hated that it hurt him. She hated more that she meant it. Kael looked toward the blood on the stair. When I know you are safe. No. Her voice broke once, then steadied. You don't get to decide when I have earned my own freedom back. Silence stretched between them. The bond beneath Elara's skin pulled toward him anyway, cruel in its simplicity. Only hours ago she had chosen his kiss. She had believed the restraint in his hands meant he finally understood the difference between wanting and possessing. Now there were guards at her door. Elara turned away. I need my transfer records. Kael's head lifted. Transfer? If I cannot work without permission to move, I will not work here. Elara, I am resigning from the Royal Healing Archive. He went completely still. She did not wait for an answer. Mara helped her complete the archive transfer paperwork that afternoon. Every active file had to be logged, every certified copy accounted for, every council request checked against its counterfoil. That was when Elara saw Dorian Vay's name again. The request for Elias Voss handwriting exemplars had been approved 3 days earlier. Beneath it sat another form. Council Scriptorium Work Order. Purpose: reconstruction of damaged Voss materials for comparative historical review. Authorized by Office of the First Voice. Seraphine Vale's seal pressed darkly into the bottom corner. Elara read the form twice. Historical reconstruction was legal. Old documents were routinely recreated for study when originals were too fragile to handle. Still, the timing made her uneasy. Mara leaned over her shoulder. Something wrong? I don't know. That was the problem. Suspicion was not evidence. Elara copied the request number into the transfer log and moved on. A letter waited in her room that evening. Silvercrest Pack. Elara recognized the seal from a scholarly journal that had published one of her short archival notes 2 weeks earlier under the attribution clause in her contract. The letter offered her a position as lead medical archivist. Full salary. Independent research authority. A room in the scholar's wing. No royal shield. No guards. The offer had been written before Tomas was attacked, proof that this escape had not been manufactured by fear or Kael's mistake. No obligation to remain near a throne. By morning, her decision was made. Kael met her at the gates. He had dismissed the escort. For a moment, neither spoke. Snowmelt ran beneath the stone bridge. Beyond it, the road south disappeared between black pines. You have another position, he said. Yes. Silvercrest? She nodded. His wolf pressed against the air between them, powerful enough that she felt it in her bones. Kael's hands remained at his sides. Stay. The word came rough. Elara waited. His jaw tightened. She saw the battle happen behind his eyes, the instinct to command, to close the gates, to turn fear into authority. Then his shoulders lowered. If leaving is your choice, he said, the gates remain open. Elara's throat tightened. That is the first thing you've said today that sounds like trust. She picked up her case and walked past him. Kael did not stop her. 2 nights later, In the council offices at Vale House, Dorian Vey placed a thin file on Seraphine's desk. She opened it. Voss Reconstruction Clean Exemplars. A handwritten amendment waited beneath the title. Omit modern presentation marks. Seraphine read the line once, then pressed the seal of the first voice into the wax. Proceed. The Moon Court had no throne. That was the first thing Elara noticed when she entered the circular chamber beneath Blackthorn's eastern tower. 9 stone seats faced the central floor. Representatives of the great packs occupied 5. 3 members of the pack medical tribunal sat opposite them. The final seat belonged to the High Luna Council. Seraphine Vale sat there. Kael stood behind the crown rail. Elara walked to the center table alone. The tribunal chair, healer magistrate Orin, broke the seals on the first evidence case only after the keeper of royal records and the tribunal registrar confirmed them together. Winter Relief Ledger, Volume 7, Orin said. Original custody verified. The old ledger was placed on its cradle. A second clerk produced the certified facsimile Elara had made months earlier, now docketed for the hearing. Seraphine rose. The question before this court is not whether Miss Voss can read old records, she said. It is whether she used privileged access to rewrite the history of a disgraced father, and whether the Alpha King's favor protected her while she did it. Dorian Vey sat behind the council rail, expressionless. Seraphine's first exhibit was a letter. The paper and ink were period correct. Elias Voss's signature curved across the bottom. Elara's stomach turned before she read the first line. I accept responsibility for the diversion of Northern relief allocations. The second exhibit was worse. Supplier vouchers matched the exact deficit recorded in the official relief accounts. Then came a former clerk, now gray-haired, who swore Elias had often taken working papers home after hours. Seraphine finished with Elara's own contract. She demanded the right to make copies, Seraphine said. She had the source material, the motive, and months without evidentiary supervision before the original ledger was sealed. One tribunal member studied the confession again. Kael's scent changed behind the rail, sharp with controlled anger. Seraphine turned to him. And His Majesty cannot cure these defects by declaring her trustworthy. His personal attachment is precisely why Crown testimony cannot settle this matter. Kael's hand closed around the rail. Orin looked at Elara. Your answer? Elara stared at the vouchers. Too clean. Every total matched. Every deficit reconciled exactly. May I have the Northern treatment rolls already entered in the docket? Orin nodded. A clerk brought them. Elara laid one beside the vouchers. These documents assume the relief accounts were reconciled financially before treatment distribution. Seraphine said, because they were. No. Elara turned a wartime treatment roll toward the tribunal. At that time, medicine moved by treatment batch first. Financial reconciliation came afterward because roads failed, packs shifted, and emergency quantities changed in transit. She tapped the forged voucher. This records a final monetary allocation before the corresponding treatment batch was closed. A clerk from that winter would not have done that. Elara requested the Vale private treatment register. Batch NR 417 appeared exactly where she remembered it. Then NR 422. No, dart, use, tus beer. Medicine officially listed as missing had been administered inside Vale private facilities. It did not disappear, Elara said. It was diverted. Seraphine's face remained composed. That does not clear your father. No, this does. Elara asked for Elias's formal variance report. The keeper produced the sealed original. Received Royal Secretariat. My father identified those same batch numbers and requested an investigation before the relief deficit was assigned to him. Oren looked from the report to the supposed confession. Seraphine answered smoothly. A guilty man may report irregularities to protect himself. Elara had expected that. She picked up the confession. The forgery was excellent. Then she found the mark. Two tiny crescents, curved inside the word allocation, in the second paragraph. Her pulse slowed. Bring the certified facsimile beside the original ledger, please. Mara Fenwick stepped forward as archive witness. 3 documents were arranged side by side. Elara opened the original to her father's damaged marginal note. The surviving letters showed the beginning and end of the same word allocation, but water had destroyed the middle. No crescents. She opened her facsimile. Relief allo cation. Then she pointed to the confession. The same 2 crescents sat in the same word. Oren frowned. Explain. My father never wrote that mark. Elara looked at the tribunal. I did. Silence fell across the chamber. Mara, double crescents are a modern preservation mark, Mara said. They indicate missing or unreadable source text. Miss Voss inserted them during transcription. I witnessed and countersigned the copy. Elara touched the original. The damaged source has no mark because there was nothing left to copy. Then the facsimile. I added the crescents because I refused to guess the missing letters. Whoever built this confession needed a sample of how my father formed the word allocation. They took it from my facsimile and copied my editorial mark as though it were part of his handwriting. Finally, she touched the confession. That letter was written from my copy, not by my father. Seraphine's expression changed by less than an inch. Kael rose. His dominance struck the chamber like pressure before a storm. Several wolves stiffened. Elara turned. No, Your Majesty. Every eye moved to her. Kael stared back. She held his gaze. You gave me a voice once. Let me use it. For one terrible second, instinct warred across his face. Then Alpha King Kael Draven sat down. Elara turned back to the court. Do not believe me because I am Elias Voss's daughter, she said. Read the sequence. The variance report came first. Elias identified the Vale diversions and formally requested investigation. Next came the War Cabinet Minute, dated 3 days later. His Majesty reviewed Healer Voss's allegations regarding Vale relief diversions. Then came the Emergency Alliance Continuance Order, bearing the former Alpha King's signature. It deferred the investigation while preserving Vale troop levies for the Northern Campaign. The last record was Elias's credential revocation after House Vale accused him. The inquiry the Crown had postponed was never reopened. My father was not destroyed because the truth was impossible to find, Elara said. The truth reached the Crown. She felt Kael behind her and did not soften the next words. The Crown chose not to act on it. No one spoke. Oren conferred quietly with the tribunal. When he faced the chamber again, his voice was formal. The charges that Elara Voss fabricated the historical diversion are dismissed. The record supports Elias Voss as the reporting healer, not the author of the diversion. The finding of professional misconduct against him is vacated. Elara's knees nearly weakened. She remained standing. Oren raised a hand. The confession submitted against Elias Voss is also established as inauthentic. Seraphine finally spoke. You have not established who created it. No, Elara said. She refused the temptation to reach beyond the evidence. And no one should be convicted on inference. Oren nodded once. He ordered the facsimile access register produced. It showed one external counsel request before the ledger entered evidentiary hold. Receiving officer, Dorian Vey. Authorizing office, first voice of the High Luna Council. Seraphine seal. Darian went pale. It was not proof of authorship. Not yet. Oren closed the file. This court orders an immediate integrity inquiry into the office of the First Voice. All relevant council access records, reconstruction orders, and scriptorium files are frozen effective now. For the first time since Elara had known her, Seraphine did not have an answer ready. 3 weeks later, Seraphine Vale returned to Blackthorn without an escort of admirers. The council disposition was held in a smaller chamber than Moon Court. Only the officials required to hear the findings. Kael at the crown rail, Elara beside Mara, and Seraphine standing before the council table, where she had once spoken as first voice. The council secretary opened a sealed report. The integrity inquiry had not retried Elara's case. It had traced custody. The office of the first voice had requested the certified facsimile of Winter Relief Ledger, Volume 7. Dorian Vey had signed for it. The same office later requested Elara Voss handwriting exemplars and authorized a scriptorium reconstruction of damaged Voss material. The scriptorium files frozen after Moon Court completed the chain. Their production log recorded the Voss reconstruction under Dorian's work order number. The delivery entry returned the clean exemplars to the office of the First Voice. Seraphine's signed amendment ordered modern reconstruction marks omitted. The exhibit register from Moon Court showed those reconstructed sheets were later submitted by her office as purported originals. No new witness had appeared. No hidden confession had been found. The records simply met one another. Lady Seraphine Vale, the secretary said, the inquiry finds that your office knowingly presented unlabeled reconstructions as authentic historical evidence. You are removed as first voice of the High Luna Council, suspended from council authority pending civil review, and House Vale relief accounts are placed under external audit effective immediately. An attendant stepped to the table. The silver first voice seal that had rested beside Seraphine's chair for years was lifted, placed inside a black box, and locked. Then the chair itself was pulled back from the council table. Seraphine watched it move. For the first time, Elara understood how much of the woman's power had depended on everyone agreeing that the chair belonged to her. Seraphine turned. Do you imagine they will ever truly accept you? Elara met her eyes. I stopped requiring their permission. Something bitter passed through Seraphine's expression, but she gave Elara no final outburst. She gathered her gloves and left with her back straight. That was the last time Elara saw her. Later that afternoon, 2 letters waited on Elara's desk in the Royal Healing Archive. The first bore the seal of Silvercrest Pack. Their offer remained open. Lead medical archivist, independent research authority, excellent salary. The second came from Blackthorn, chief keeper of Royal Healing Records, with consulting privileges at the Royal Infirmary. Now that the tribunal had restored her license, her father's professional record had also been corrected. Elara Voss was no longer listed as a disgraced healer. He was recorded as the man who reported the diversion. Elara sat with both letters before her. Silvercrest offered a clean beginning. Blackthorn did not. Blackthorn contained the records that had failed her father, the laws that had failed her, and an archive still full of gaps where powerful people had decided silence was convenient. That was precisely why she chose it. She signed the Blackthorn appointment before sunset. Not because Kael ruled there, because the work was hers. He came to the archive after dark. Elara heard him pause at the doorway. May I? She looked up. Yes. Kael entered. The distance between them held the gates, the guards, the kiss before them, and the Moon Court after. I heard you accepted the position, he said. I did. You chose Blackthorn. I chose the work. I know. They mattered. Kael stopped across the table from her. I thought being alpha meant nothing dangerous should ever reach the people I cared for. That sounds noble. It becomes less noble when you stop asking what they want. He did not look away. The first time, I put you under my shield and cost you your work. The second time, I put guards around you after promising trust. Twice I told myself fear gave me the right to choose for you. His voice lowered. It didn't. Elara studied him. You sat down. He knew what she meant. At Moon Court. Yes. Every instinct I had told me to stand between you and that room. But you sat. You asked me to. A faint ache moved through her chest. So I did. Kael stepped closer, but stopped before reaching her. The bond between them stirred, warm and familiar now. His wolf recognized hers. Hers answered. My wolf recognized you before I understood you, he said. That does not make you mine. Her breath caught. It makes choosing you easier for me. It cannot choose for you, neither can I. He glanced toward the appointment letter. You chose Blackthorn. I chose the work. I know. A small smile touched his face. And I am glad you did. He waited. Then, with none of the authority he had used in the feast hall, he asked, Will you choose me too? Elara looked at the man who had once placed her beside him without asking, and the man who had learned to sit because she asked him to. She came around the table. Beside you, she said. Kael's eyes softened. Never beneath me. You finally learned. His hand touched her face only after she leaned toward him. The kiss was slower than their first, steadier, built on the knowledge that either of them could step away. Neither did. Months later, the royal pack gathering filled Blackthorn's great hall again. This time, Elara entered through the central doors. Chief Keeper Elara Voss, Royal Healing Records. Her own title came first. Near the wall, a young healer from a minor northern pack stood alone, clutching a folio while nobles talked around her as if she were furniture. Elara remembered exactly what that felt like. She pulled out the empty chair beside her. Sit. The young healer blinked. Here? Elara smiled. Here. Across the table, Kael watched her. He did not speak. He did not need to.